With the introduction of the 2022 Illinois Standards for Social Science comes a new framework identifying 6 core competencies for powerful, rigorous, and culturally responsive social science instruction. These competencies are designed to provide a vehicle towards a responsive, affirming, engaging, and challenging social science instruction for students kindergarten through 12th grade that acknowledges their humanity and prepares them with the knowledge, skills, dispositions to critically and actively participate in college, career, and civic life. The 6 core competencies are: students learn to recognize perspectives and identities. They evaluate systems, inequity, and power. They investigate the world. They conduct analysis and draw conclusions. They communicate effectively, and they take action and reflect on their learning. These competencies are intended to work together to guide teachers and students through a process of inquiry-based learning in social science that is driven by rich and relevant essential questions rooted in real-world topics and enduring themes in our society that can be critically examined and investigated through the various disciplines in social science. With this best practice, research-based approach to social science teaching and learning, students are given opportunities to make connections to social science content, engage in social scientists' ways of thinking, and are empowered to apply their learning in powerful ways by taking informed action in their communities, their classroom community, their school communities, their neighborhoods, and communities beyond that. As stated in the National College, Career, and Civic Life, or C3 framework for social science state standards, now more than ever, students need the intellectual power to recognize societal problems, ask good questions, and develop robust investigations into those questions, consider possible solutions and consequences, separate evidence-based claims, and communicate and act upon what they learn. The first domain of the ISBE inquiry framework is recognize perspectives and identities. This domain encourages students to recognize perspectives, including their own, and articulate the role of identity throughout the entire inquiry process. The perspectives and experiences that young people bring to our social science classrooms are important because they serve as lenses for which young people engage in social science content and can also provide access points to learning. To better understand our social world and the complexities of our society, young people must be given opportunities to consider how they have been shaped by social, cultural, and historical factors, as well as how other people have been shaped by these things. According to Asia Society, students who recognize perspectives are able to recognize that they have a particular perspective and that others may not share it. They are able to articulate and explain the perspectives of other people, groups, or schools of thought and identify influences on these perspectives, including how differential access to knowledge, technology, and resources can affect people's views, among other things. The Illinois Social Science Standards focus on the role of identity and perspectives by encouraging students to consider the following: how social, cultural, gender, and economic factors can influence behavior and human interactions in societies around the world, how social context and culture influence individual and group behavior, and how group membership can influence individuals and shape societal norms and values. Recognizing perspectives and identities is an essential component of how we as social science educators prepare our young people to engage in college, career, and civic life, as well as how we help them develop a positive sense of self and identity. Within the classroom, what could this look like? This could look like incorporating multiple perspectives and experiences into our units of study. For example, when exploring a traditional topic in US history, such as the American Revolution, how are we including multiple perspectives to better understand this historical time period, such as the voices of women, Native Americans, Black Americans, in addition to the colonists, to provide a more complete and inclusive picture of this history? Or how are we looking at our scope and sequences, our curriculums, and asking ourselves, do we incorporate topics into our curriculum that aren't traditionally taught? Do we incorporate topics that reflect the identities and experiences of the young people that are in front of us? And do we incorporate topics that reflect the identities and experiences from perspectives that our students do not have as much access to in our classroom or in our community? This could also look like having our students analyze sources in a unit of study by incorporating questions such as, who wrote this? What is the author's perspective? What is their story? How has their thinking been informed by social or cultural, political, etc. factors? And how do I know? The second domain of the ISBE inquiry framework is evaluate systems, inequity, and power. This domain encourages students to evaluate the role of systems, power, and equity in our society. In preparing students for college career and participating in civic life, it is essential that we help them learn, in the words of Dr. Clint Smith, how to hold together a complex set of facts that don't neatly fit into a specific ideological position, such as how, on one hand, there are a lot of freedoms within our society in the United States, but there are also a lot of inequities. Understanding this complexity and this duality demands a level of rigor that is often missing in our social science curricula and instruction, but is really important as well as relevant to what our students see and or experience in our society. Our students see and they might experience inequity. Part of our job as social science educators is to give our students the tools and content learning to be able to name it, to explain it, and to act on their learning in working towards a more inclusive and anti-oppressive society for everyone. This can look like incorporating critical histories and enduring themes into our curriculum that provide students with opportunities to understand the contemporary landscape of inequity and inequality, such as exploring topics like capitalism, democracy, housing, or education, to name a few, and considering how are these systems and structures set up? How have they impacted people across different experiences and identities? The third domain of the ISBE inquiry framework is investigate the world. This domain encourages students to ask questions, launch inquiries, and seek and evaluate evidence as a process for engaging in powerful, rigorous, and relevant social science learning. Within a social science unit of study, students are learning about social science content by developing and using relevant essential questions to investigate through analyzing multiple varied sources. For example, in learning about the topic of social justice movements, students can investigate the essential question of what values are worth advocating for. Through exploring this question, students can make connections to themselves, their own values, but also consider and explore the perspectives of others. Framing learning through relevant essential questions and inquiry and investigation also supports us as social science educators in engaging in critical content, such as discussing power, inequity, etc., with students. Students could unpack the essential question of what is justice and explore different examples of injustice, both past and present, and arrive at their own evidence-based conclusions to that essential question. The framing of social science learning through inquiry and investigation of relevant essential questions, such as what values are worth advocating for, or what is justice, fosters engagement and learning for students because it gives the content a purpose, it ignites student curiosity, and allows for them to make connections to their own lived experiences, their identities, and their perspectives.
Competency 4, conduct analyses and draw conclusions, is the natural follow-up to students' investigation of the world. This competency requires students to seek out and analyze multiple sources of information in the course of creating claims, forming conclusions, and envisioning solutions. As students progress through their K-12 social studies education, the complexity of these claims, conclusions, and solutions becomes more nuanced and sophisticated as students are asked to account for perspective and bias. The 5th competency, communicate effectively, calls upon our students to develop strong and effective communication skills. Effective communication is embedded in every step of the inquiry process, when considering one's perspective, when developing questions, when considering sources and conclusions, when evaluating inequity, systems, and power, and when deliberating on potential courses of action. Fostering and supporting genuine communication between teacher and students is especially important, as learning achieves its highest purpose when the needs and interests of each member of the classroom are met, and each student's unique voice is heard, acknowledged, and honored. It is by practicing effective communication in the classroom that students are able to effectively communicate throughout the inquiry and while taking action outside of the classroom to affect change. The 6th competency, take action to affect change and reflect, in some ways represents the highest aim of social studies education. Supporting students in their efforts to take action is a deliberative process where students wrestle with issues, hypothesize solutions, and work with teacher support to determine how to best take action. It isn't orienting students toward action and helping them frame questions as actionable that educators provide the conditions for students to fully utilize the unique set of skills social studies offers. Moreover, it is in supporting students as civic actors that they learn how to address inequity and injustice in society. What makes this competency unique is its juxtaposition with reflection. Though both action and reflection occur at the concluding stages of inquiry, both also inform the entire inquiry process. Students engaging in inquiry should be encouraged to reflect at each stage of the process, as they consider their own perspectives, as they gather and evaluate sources, as they consider action, and so forth. Supporting reflection in oneself and one's students is what allows us to grow as learners and as human beings. It's important to know up front that the 6 competencies are not something new being added to our plate. We all know that plate is plenty full. The 6 competencies are the plate. These 6 competencies synthesize and condense much of the C3 inquiry arc, SEL standards, and the Illinois social science standards into a straightforward, understandable framework that can be easily recalled. The first domain, which is recognizing perspectives and identities, is foundational to several SEL standards, including ones that focus on relationship skills, social awareness, and self-awareness. The second competency, evaluating systems, inequity, and power, is really critical to understanding the social world and is embedded throughout the revised social science standards, as well as in Dimension 2 of the C3 framework. For the third competency, which is investigate the world, this competency focuses students on asking questions, launching inquiries, and evaluating evidence. This competency, too, is found throughout much of the C3 framework as well as in the 2022 social science standards. When we get to the fourth and fifth competencies, we see a focus on analysis, drawing conclusions, and communication. Students, again, use these competencies throughout the inquiry process, as well as when they work to meet SEL standards and as they prepare to take action to affect change. The last competency really emphasizes or focuses on action and reflection, and this is the heart of Dimension 4 of the C3 framework. It too is a big part of the Illinois social science standards, and it's even emphasized in the Illinois service learning requirement for high school students and middle school students. Taken as a whole, the 6 domains of social studies competence offer K-12 teachers in Illinois and students a powerful vision of social science teaching and learning. The competencies provide a practical framework that can be used by teachers to guide the creation of lessons, instructional units, and even assessments. The domains can even be used with students to identify their own learning goals or to self-assess social science fluency. Perhaps most importantly, articulating these 6 domains of competence set the stage for deep and culturally responsive inquiry as they help frame the learning process as one that values student agency and one in which teachers and students are co-learners and co-creators of knowledge. Moreover, the competencies provide a way to begin to think about the importance of inquiry in a student's development as a unique thinker, a civic actor, and as a human being. We'll now take a listen to teachers and students explain why they believe inquiry is important. And as you listen, consider how their thoughts speak to the 6 domains of social science competency.
Inquiry-based learning is important because it promotes critical thinking skills and helps you identify something you're passionate about and helps you pursue that passion throughout your entire life.
It's important because it allows students to be themselves in their learning and construct themselves their own pathway into their careers, and also to include diversity and inclusion and equity within their learning without having to follow certain instructions, and just be themselves in their learning and in their career pathways.
I think inquiry-based learning is really important because it shows students how to take control of what they want to learn, and it's like a preview of the future life where not everything is just going to be handed to you. So I think that it's really important that we continue to use it because I know I've been able to grow as a person that way.
Inquiry-based learning allows students to become active participants in their education. In this type of learning, students get to generate their own questions, and those questions guide their learning throughout the unit and possibly the year. So instead of following a preconceived idea of the curriculum, the students get to be a part of the decision-making process.
Inquiry-based learning is important because it gives students the freedom and agency to explore the concepts they want, and it breeds enthusiasm, it builds skills that they wouldn't otherwise be able to learn in curriculum, like ingenuity and innovation and creativity, but also, perseverance once they meet a unexpected turn or struggle.